I know you mentioned the meeting that took place today between Mark Carney and the president. Excuse me. If you are the prime minister at the end of all of this, would you have any preconditions on a meeting with the president? And I know you haven't seen it yet because it just happened. The president's in the Oval Office and he just said, we have Liberation Day on April 2nd. And I'm not talking about Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us. Any thoughts on potentially a changing tone out of the White House?
Well, let's hope that there is a change in tone. We want to put an end to this crazy tariff chaos. We have the best trading relationship in the history of the world. Why not continue and grow that trading relationship as two separate sovereign nations? My message to President Trump is that true free trade without tariffs will allow both of our economies to separately grow stronger so that we can fund stronger militaries and more secure borders and make our continent safe against the real risks from overseas. That's the goal that we should all be working towards. And my goal will be to make Canada, regardless of what the Americans do, this has all been a wake-up call for us. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants and slow-rolling resource projects, capping our oil and gas sector, the Liberals have made us too reliant on the Americans. That will end. My government will repeal the entire carbon tax, the energy cap, the anti-pipeline law, C-69. We will bring the hundreds of billions of dollars back to our economy, and we will start selling between Canadians and overseas so that we are stronger, self-reliant, sovereign, to stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans. In other words, let's bring home the country that we knew and the country that we still love. We've had a lost Liberal decade. Justin Trudeau allowed the Americans to reinstate tariffs on our lumber. Now, let's be clear. Those were not Trump's tariffs. They were Biden's tariffs. Biden then doubled the tariffs, and now President Trump wants to raise them again. Now, it's very easy to make excuses for the Liberals, saying they have no control over this, but history doesn't bear that out. Stephen Harper got a softwood lumber deal within 80 days of becoming Prime Minister that saw the Americans end the tariffs and reimburse the ones they had already collected. So the Liberals have not made protection of our softwood lumber a priority. They have failed over a decade, and our workers are paying the price. I will negotiate to end the softwood lumber tariffs so that we can get our lumber to the American market. I will also massively stimulate home building. So this lumber can go into building new homes by taking the GST off new homes, incentivizing municipalities to free up permits, speed up approvals, cut development charges, and open up land to construction. By selling off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land, we can build millions of new homes with Canadian lumber. That'll mean the workers at this mill and in the forests of Canada can make bigger paychecks, which they can bring to houses that they can afford to buy. In other words, we need to bring home the Canadian promise. And the choice in the next election is, after the lost Liberal decade of losing jobs and wealth to the South, of higher taxes and crime, do they deserve a fourth term, or is it time to put Canada first with a new Conservative government that will bring our jobs home to Canadians? Oh, well, it's clear that the president would like to keep the Liberals in power. They've been very good for his agenda. He wants to take our money and our jobs, and Liberals have helped him do it. They've blocked pipelines, LNG plants, they've raised taxes. Mr. Carney wants a massive tax on our Canadian industry that will drive jobs south of the border. Mark Carney and Donald Trump have one thing in common. They both favor taxing Canadian industry. Trump with tariffs and Carney with carbon taxes. And obviously that will send hundreds of thousands more jobs south of the border into the arms of the Americans. By contrast, though, Canadians will have to decide after the lost Liberal decade, Do you want to give the Liberals a fourth term of driving up costs and crime, driving our economy down under the American thumb? Or is it time to put Canada first for a change? With a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, greenlight our resources, bring home our jobs so that we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength. Thank you very much. Very good question. About 2 years ago, I made a video near one of the tent encampments in Vancouver where I said that this policy of decriminalizing and handing out drugs on our streets was a disaster, and the Liberals attacked me mercilessly for it, saying that it was cold-hearted and mean. Well, what was cold-hearted and mean was leaving those people in tent cities dying of drug overdoses. We now know that the radical drug policies of the Liberals have been a deadly disaster. BC is perhaps the worst place on earth for drug overdoses as a result of these very radical experiments. Liberals now have the same MPs, the same ministers, and even some of the more radical people like Gregor Robertson, who are on their team that will continue the chaos. Canadians will have to decide. After a lost Liberal decade of drug overdoses, death, and chaos in our streets, is it time to re-elect them a fourth time in power, or do we need to put Canada and Canadian safety first with a new Conservative government that will ban the drugs, stop giving out tax-funded opioids, shut down the drug consumption sites, and put the resources into treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free? Detox, counseling, group therapy, physical exercise, yoga, sweat lodges for First Nations, job placement and housing to get people off the street, out of the tents, into homes. And my message to anyone out there who's struggling with addiction: hang on, have hope. Help is on the way. Just to put it in perspective, fentanyl is 100 times more powerful than heroin. 40 milligrams of fentanyl can kill 20 people. A mass trafficker of these drugs is a mass murderer. He's like firing a gun into a crowded room. He doesn't know maybe who he's going to hit, but he's definitely killing somebody. 2 criminals were recently caught here in this area, Nanaimo, at a, quote, safe injection site sanctioned by the federal government under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and often funded with your tax dollars. There, these offenders were caught at the site by officers. They were caught with 245 grams of suspected methamphetamines, 230 grams of suspected cocaine, 45 grams of fentanyl. Another investigation led officers to find 640 grams of meth, 280 grams of cocaine, and 190 of fentanyl. They also seized 3 illegal firearms. Sadly, these stories are now all too common after the Liberals weakened our laws and allowed drugs in our streets. And because Liberals have stacked these laws one on top of the other, the problem compounds. Electing the Carney Liberals will mean 4 more years of the same failed Liberal catch and release, soft on crime, hug-a-thug policies that got us into this mess. 4 more years of the Liberals after the lost decade will mean more crime, more chaos, more death, more destruction. It's no secret that the Liberal drug policy has been a disaster, but they're doubling down. They have the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, and the same Liberal policies of the last decade. In fact, they've gotten even more extreme. Now, the Liberals have brought on Gregor Robertson, the radical former mayor of Vancouver, who's known for running dangerous experiments like drug liberalization and so-called safe supply that flooded the streets.